Hi, it's me again. Today we will demonstrate how to integrate ClearPass and mobility controller. There will be two cases, one mobility controller as a standalone mobility controller. The other mobility controller will be managed by a mobility conductor, used to be called mobility master. We'll look how to create the service on the ClearPass to serve the request from a wireless client to connect to a wireless network. This is just an example of how to do that configuration. So let's go. So this is the ClearPass component. That's ClearPass landing page. So here we're going to just connect to ClearPass Policy Manager, which is the authentication component of the ClearPass solution. Here we are going to log in. So admin, whatever password. Now a bunch of things in here. We're going to create the service, but there are two steps I would like to perform before we go ahead and do that. You need to integrate the NAT device, which is the network access device, which is in this case would be the mobility controller, and integrate that mobility controller into ClearPass. To do this, you simply go to configuration, and under the network, you add devices, and there are no devices by default added. I will add a device. I'm going to just call this one because I'm going to add a range of devices if you like. So we're going to use a subnet mask of /16 or to represent multiple devices in that subnet. I will call them Aruba mobility controllers. So here they all belong to 10.1.0.0/16. So 10.1.0.0/16 represent all mobility controllers. And the radius shared secret or the pre-shared key is going to be used. In this case, I will call it Aruba 123. So that's all done. We don't have to do much more than this. And we're going to say add. So now we have our devices being added. We also like to create a local user. And later on, we're going to show you how to integrate this with Active Directory. So local user creation, also under the configuration, identity. Under the identity, there's a local user here. We will go and add, and let's call it user one for simplicity, user one, and the name local user, and password, we're going to say Aruba lowercase. Password would be Aruba lowercase. The role that are built-in role, we're going to just make it simple. We're going to use one of the built-in roles, which is going to be employee, and we're going to say add. So we have the infrastructure ready for us. We have the ClearPass. We have added the device. This is the NAT device, in this case, our mobility controllers. And we have created a single user in this case. Now let's focus back to the services. This is where the service request that comes from a NAT device will be fulfilled. So you have two options. Either you manually add the service, or you can go for the template and wizards. And you can go all templates or .1x only templates. So that will make it easy for you to see subset of that. Now, because we are now dealing with Aruba devices, Aruba NAT device, we will go for the Aruba .1x authentication, which is this template. That makes life easy for you. Okay, so the prefix is what we're going to name, give the name for that service. You click next, or you can click on the tab. And we are going to select the authentication source. We are going to use a local user repository, the one we have just created now. And here in the wireless network settings, you just pull out what you have had. And that will automatically add the characteristics or all attributes if we have need, or if we need to add attributes. We would like to make this one as simple as possible. So we're going to just go for simple stuff here. And we're going to look then after that, we're going to look at the service. What are the conditions that have been created? So come here, we say role name, and simply speaking, we're going to just say employee. Again, make it extremely simple. Control V, yeah. And also default role that must be configured. And we will go for default role. So think of these ones are the logic, i.e. in the enforcement policy, what are the conditions that need to be fulfilled to assign something. And I'm going to add service. The service has been added now. Let's have a look at the service and let's look at the conditions that have been added to this service. So Obviously, you would normally reorder this. In this example, it doesn't really matter, but you can click on this while you release the mouse button. You just take your mouse up, the pointer up to the very top. It says move to the first position. We're good with that, and save it. So let's look at what really has happened here. Notice that we have created a service, and these two conditions have been embedded for us. And here it's generic Aruba service. So this third condition says if any connection request comes from Aruba NAT device and the ESSINA name exists, it means anything, then this service is applicable to us. And in the this is where you edit things and you give description. Here you can look at the authentication method. If you are not using any other authentication methods, you can remove them if you would like to. So that's something you can remove all the time. Remove this, remove that. And in the role, we are not using any role mapping. We'll come back and role mapping, we'll talk about it in a specific video. In the enforcement, this is something that we have created, in the wizard. What we could have done, what we could do, we go to sample allow access. So it means we allow access regardless. So this is the kind of the most generic wireless service that is applicable to any Aruba connection request, any wireless. Did that be a controller-based wireless, or did that be a standalone instant AP based wireless? So that's done now. We're going to save it again because we have created or made some modification in this case. Now we will focus on the mobility controller itself, and we're going to create a service for that specific purpose. Let's go and have a look at the mobility controller. So this is the standalone mobility controller, our mobility controller. We will log into this mobility controller to create the service, i.e. we're going to create WLAN service, meaning the SSID we expect it to be used by the client to authenticate. Now that's the interface, and we will connect to the actual mobility controller here, the physical one. You need to go to the configuration. You need to go to WLAN, and then WLANs, you are going to click on the plus sign to add one. Let's say, let's call it secure wireless, okay? The type will be employee. We'll leave everything as is, and we're going to go next. In the VLAN, we're going to configure that one to be just VLAN 20. Very simple, straightforward. Next, in here we will select the WPA2 enterprise, and we will add the details of the ClearPass. By default, ClearPass is not there. It's only internal database authentication. So we're going to click on the plus sign, and any name can be given, but just let's call it ClearPass 10.254.1.23, and that's a ClearPass IP address. And the shared key in here would be the same that we have created when we added the NAT device into ClearPass, so they have to match. After you add the ClearPass as a server, as an authentication server, you can also edit this one if you would like to. Of course, we made a mistake, we deleted it. So we'll just add it again. ClearPass 10.254.1.23. And this is the same share key you have done when you've done the NAT device inside ClearPass. So there we go. Then we go next, and we will select the default role, simply speaking, the firewall role. And we have already installed the licenses, authenticated, we'll go for that, which is kind of allow everything. And we go finish. So once we finish, you have to apply the settings, click on pending configuration, deploy config. So now we have created WLAN, and we're gonna just test the authentication now. So now the WLAN SSID has been created. We have one access point, as you can see clearly here. Now we're going to test that WLAN from the client. Now that's the client we're going to test. And if you see, we list through or sift through, this is the secure WLAN that we have created. Click on it and say connect. And the user that we have created previously was user 1. And password was Aruba. And we will connect in this way. Now you can see we have connected. The client has picked up an IP address. We can look at the properties here. And everything has been successful, IP address. We should now be able to see the client on ClearPass in the access tracker. Let's have a look. So now log in again to ClearPass Policy Manager. You look at the monitoring, access tracker. Now we should be able to see that user has connected and logged in. Clearly, it's very simple, straightforward process here. There's no really any enforcement, i.e. we're just allowing user. We are not sending anything back to the controller. We're not restricting anything. This is just to demonstrate the relationship or the basic relationship between wireless controller and ClearPass. So we can clearly see that this role is employee, which is the same role as of the user. And the user is authenticated because this is user authenticated, and the enforcement profile allows everybody. If you look at the output, there's nothing really to be sent back. It's just allowing user to connect. That's now a controller that is standalone controller. We'll configure something similar to that one in a controller that is managed by a mobility master. And if I issue the command to show role info, and that will tell you it is managed device, and the mobility conductor in this case IP address is 10.254.1.203, and there's a security connection or IPsec show crypto IPsec SA. You're going to see the relationship between this controller and the other mobility conductor. So we know this controller is managed by a mobility conductor. I'll show you how to create an SSID inside the mobility conductor, which is managing this mobility controller. Now that is the mobility controller that is managed by a mobility conductor, or they used to call it mobility master. So this mobility conductor has a single controller, just to demonstrate this as a demo. Now that mobility master that is managing the mobility controller. Now we created a My Lab folder, and then we placed the mobility controller underneath that folder. Now to create a WLAN, we need to go WLAN. So we decided to go to My Lab, but before that, we need just to make sure we have enough or the right or the correct VLAN. So let's just create the VLAN here. And there's only one VLAN here, so let's add another VLAN. We'll call it employee VLAN. A VLAN ID will be, in this case, 31, as per our setup. So that's VLAN ID. You click on that VLAN ID. And that VLAN ID can be assigned an IP address. For the functionality of this, it doesn't really need to be assigned an IP. Now, this is a VLAN that is permitted to leave the trunk port. So if you go to the interfaces ports here, we have configured trunk port on the actual mobility controller, and you can see so VLAN and the trunk port here is the native VLAN 30 and allow all VLANs. So it should allow this VLAN also to go through the mobility controller trunk interface. We can verify this one also from the command line. So if need be, we can look at the command line and find out what is the trunk port of that controller, making sure when the client connects, we'll get an IP address. So we can say show port, show trunk actually. Yeah, we can say show trunk. Now we can see the VLANs that are configured. VLAN 1 by default, VLAN 30 and 31, and both of them are allowed to leave the controller interface trunk G000. So with that, let's just move on and start creating the WLAN and verify the authentication on the ClearPass. So start from here. We can create a WLAN here if you would like to. Again, just to make sure the VLAN does exist here, VLAN 1 and 31. But we can also create the WLAN on this level. And because this is just a demo, we're going to just go to a mobility controller and create the WLAN. So there we go. Add. Again, we're going to call it secure one WLAN. Okay. But we're going to distinguish between the other one. So we're going to call this WLAN managed device. And we're going to leave everything as set up as default. And we're going to select the VLAN 31 here. Next, we can clearly see we just moved to WPA2 Enterprise. We don't have that ClearPass server. I will give it a name that should make sense. So we're going to go ClearPass. And the IP 10.254.1.23. Again, Aruba 123, the same. And we will submit this. Then now, next, we will leave everything as is, and we will select the authenticated route firewall. So that permits everything, basically. That pretty much everything is allowed for that user who connect to that WLAN. So just to verify, we'll make sure that that WLAN has been created. We can look at the controller, and the controller interface should show us that the VLAN has been created. The WLAN has been created. So show WLAN virtual AP, we can see this one here. And obviously we can see the details of that one. But again, this is not our focus. We can see more details. I will probably can look at some more resources. I will produce more videos on this. But that's now we created it. Let's just test the connectivity from the client. So we're going to log into a client right now, and we will test the connectivity to that specific WLAN and see the output on the mobility on the ClearPass. We see the output on ClearPass and find out what ClearPass sees in this case. So let's log in, move to the machine that is going to be used for connectivity purpose. So that's the machine that we will use to connect. Click on this one. You can see employee.1x. We can see secure wireless and secure wireless MD. That is the new one that is managed by Mobility Conductor. The name, as we know, is user one. We created a local name and a local user one, and the password, we have configured that one as Aruba. And that is warning because of certificate, but we will accept it. So everything goes fine. That should have picked up an IP address in VLAN 31. So if you look at the VLAN 31, so it should be 10.1.31.51. So that's great. We will look at the ClearPass itself now and verify that ClearPass is able to see the client who has authenticated. ClearPass goes here. Most likely this has been disconnected. Oh, not the case. Perfect. Now we can see now, this is the service that has honored, okay, user one. And user one here, we can see it has connected, and network NAT access device is 10.254.1.203, which is basically, this is the mobility master, again, or mobility conductor. Again, there are details about the NAT device or the NAS IP we can update. And again, this is outside the scope of this demo. And the output here is simply just nothing. And the input, this is what the radius request, where does it come from, and details of the connectivity, including machine ID or station ID or station MAC address. Also the access point MAC address, controller MAC address, multiple other things. And computer attribute are the ones that the ClearPass will use to authenticate that user. So this is now, we have authenticated using mobility controller that is a standalone mobility controller. And we have also demonstrated the fact that we can authenticate using a mobility controller that is managed by a mobility conductor. And we could see that the authentication has both succeeded. And we have looked at how ClearPass is configured to accept this kind of configuration. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in future videos. Thank you.